Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead and stared at the numbers on his credit chip. 7 credits. That was all he had left in the entire universe. 7 measly credits would not even buy him a decent meal at any space station in the sector. His last salvage job had been a disaster, and the repairs to his shuttle had eaten through his savings like acid through metal. The moon of Keswick 9 was a graveyard for ships. Hundreds of vessels from a dozen different species sat rusting in the thin atmosphere, waiting to be scrapped for parts. Marcus had come here as a last resort, hoping to find something, anything, that he could repair and sell for profit. But everything valuable had already been picked clean by other salvagers. He walked through the rows of dead ships, his boots crunching on the dusty ground. Most of the vessels were alien designs, their strange shapes and exotic materials completely unfamiliar to him. Even if he could afford to buy one, he would not know how to fix it. Human technology was simple compared to what the other species used. Everyone in the galaxy knew that. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives who still used chemical rockets when everyone else had mastered gravity drives centuries ago. That was when he saw it. Tucked away in the far corner of the yard, almost hidden behind a massive Vrelian cargo hauler, was a human ship. It looked ancient, maybe 300 years old. The hull was covered in rust, and several panels had fallen off completely. One of the engine nacelles was missing. The name on the side was barely visible under all the corrosion, but Marcus could just make it out. The Prometheus Legacy. Something stirred in Marcus's chest. He had not seen a ship from Earth's early expansion era in years. Most of them had been scrapped decades ago. This one must have been abandoned out here and forgotten. It was worthless, of course. No one wanted old human junk, but still, something about it called to him. He found the scrapyard owner, a Vrelian named Kektor, lounging in his office. The alien's 4 eyes widened when Marcus asked about the human ship. That piece of garbage? You actually want to buy that? Kektor's translator box crackled with what sounded like laughter. I have been trying to get rid of it for 20 cycles. No one wants it. The metal is too corroded to recycle properly. It just sits there, taking up space. How much? Marcus asked. Kektor's eye stalks swiveled as he considered. For you, 7 credits. Take it and get it off my moon. I'll even throw in the towing clamps for free. Marcus felt his heart sink and soar at the same time. 7 credits. Exactly what he had. It was insane. The ship was probably beyond repair. He would be stranded here, with no money, and no way off this rock. But something in his gut told him to do it. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the tiny spark of hope that he could find something valuable inside. Or maybe it was just stupid, human stubbornness. Deal, he said, pressing his credit chip to the scanner. Kektor completed the transaction with obvious delight. Pleasure doing business with you, human. Try not to die when that thing falls apart around you. Marcus spent the next 3 days getting the Prometheus Legacy moved to a flat area where he could work on it. His small shuttle barely had enough power to tow the larger vessel, but he managed. Up close, the ship looked even worse than he had thought. The airlock was seized shut. The windows were cracked. The entire ship groaned and creaked in the wind like it might collapse at any moment. But Marcus had grown up repairing things. His father had been a mechanic on a colony station, and he had taught Marcus everything he knew. If something was broken, you fixed it. You did not give up just because it looked impossible. He forced the airlock open with a crowbar and stepped inside. The air was stale, but breathable. Emergency life support must still be working somehow. The interior was dark and filled with floating dust. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing corridors lined with old equipment. Everything was covered in a thick layer of grime. Marcus made his way to the bridge. The control panels were dead, their screens dark and lifeless. He tried the backup power, but nothing happened. The ship's reactor must have been offline for centuries. Still, the basic structure seemed sound. No major hull breaches. The bones of the ship were good, even if everything else was falling apart. Over the next few weeks, Marcus worked like a man possessed. He stripped parts from his shuttle to get basic systems running. He welded patches over the worst of the hull damage. He cleaned out debris and replaced corroded wiring. Slowly, painfully, the Prometheus legacy began to come back to life. It was during one of these repairs that Marcus noticed something strange. He was checking the ship's mass distribution, trying to figure out why it was listing to one side, when the numbers did not make sense. According to his scanner, the ship weighed significantly more than it should, based on its size and construction. At first he thought his equipment was broken, but after triple-checking everything, he had to accept the truth. There was something inside the ship that was not on any of the original blueprints. Something hidden in the hull itself. Marcus stood in the dim cargo bay, staring at the wall panels. Somewhere behind them was a secret. Something the original owners had not wanted anyone to find. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up his cutting torch. Whatever was back there, it had been hidden for 300 years, and he was about to be the first person to see it. The cutting torch hissed and sparked as Marcus worked through the false bulkhead. It took him 6 hours to cut through the reinforced panels, and by the time he was finished, his arms ached and his eyes burned from the welding flash. But when the final section of metal fell away, he forgot all about his discomfort. Behind the wall was a room that should not exist. While the rest of the ship had been abandoned to rust and decay, this chamber was perfect. The walls gleamed under his flashlight. The air that rushed out was clean and fresh, preserved by some kind of stasis field. And in the center of the room sat a laboratory filled with equipment that looked far too advanced for a 300-year-old ship. Marcus stepped inside carefully, half expecting alarms to sound or security systems to activate. But nothing happened. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of power cells that had somehow remained charged for centuries. He moved to the nearest workstation and found it still functional. Data screens flickered to life at his touch, displaying information in Old Earth Standard English. His hands shook as he began to read. This was not just any laboratory. It was a military research facility. The ship, the Prometheus Legacy, had been a black ops vessel during something called the First Contact Wars. Marcus had heard stories about that period in history, but most records had been sealed or destroyed. It had been humanity's darkest hour, when they first encountered hostile alien species and realized how hopelessly outmatched they were. The logs painted a grim picture. Earth forces had been losing badly against an empire called the Zonthier. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had. Human ships were destroyed before they could even fire their weapons. Human colonies were wiped out with ease. Earth itself had been days away from invasion, when something changed, something that was never recorded in the official histories. Marcus kept reading, his mouth growing dry. A team of human scientists, working in secret, had made a discovery. They had realized that humanity's technological primitiveness was not just a weakness, it could be a weapon. While the aliens had built their entire civilization on incredibly advanced technology, humans still understood the basics. They still knew how to make things work, with simple tools and basic principles. And that gave them an idea. The weapon system was called the Cascade Nullifier. Marcus found the prototype sitting in a reinforced case in the corner of the lab. It was smaller than he expected, about the size of a large suitcase. But according to the research notes, this small device could do something terrifying. It could create a cascading quantum field disruption that would cause advanced technology to fail catastrophically. The more sophisticated the technology, the worse the effect. Marcus read the technical specifications 3 times before he could believe what he was seeing. The weapon did not destroy things with explosions or energy beams. Instead, it attacked the fundamental quantum processes that made advanced technology possible. It would leave primitive technology mostly untouched. But anything that relied on quantum computing, exotic matter, or advanced physics would simply stop working, permanently. The implications made his head spin. If this weapon had been deployed during the First Contact Wars, it would have reduced the mighty Xanthir Empire to helplessness. Their gravity drives would fail. Their energy shields would collapse. Their quantum computers would fry. They would be left floating in space in dead ships, completely helpless against even the most basic human missiles. But the weapon had never been used. Marcus found the final log entry, dated 3 days before the ship disappeared from all records. The entry was written by the lead scientist, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Her words were heavy with regret. "We have created something monstrous," she wrote. "Yes, it could save Earth. But at what cost? We ran the full-scale simulations today. If the cascade nullifier is activated at maximum power, it does not just disable technology temporarily. It creates a permanent dead zone that expands outward at nearly the speed of light. Everything caught in that zone would be locked into technological regression forever. No quantum computers. No faster-than-light travel. No advanced civilization. Just an ever-growing bubble of enforced primitiveness spreading through the galaxy like a plague." The log continued. "Command has ordered all prototypes destroyed. They have decided that even facing extinction is better than unleashing this on the universe. We will wipe all records and scuttle the Prometheus legacy in deep space. This technology must never be found. Humanity will have to find another way to survive, or we will die with honor rather than live as the species that murdered galactic civilization." Marcus leaned back from the screen, his mind reeling. But the ship had not been scuttled in deep space. Somehow, it had ended up here, in this forgotten scrapyard. And now, he had found it. He spent the next 2 days studying the weapon and the research data. He learned how to activate it, how to control its range and intensity. He learned about the 3 prototypes that had been built. This was Prototype 2. The log said Prototype 1 had been destroyed during testing. Prototype 3 had been aboard another ship that was supposed to be scuttled along with the Prometheus legacy. On the 3rd day, Marcus noticed something odd. His ship's communication system, which he had not bothered to repair, was showing activity. Someone was scanning the area. Multiple someones. He pulled up his passive sensors and felt his blood run cold. There were 4 ships in orbit around Keswick 9, and they were all military grade. 2 were Consortium Council vessels. 1 was broadcasting Xanthir remnant identification codes, and the last one had no identification at all. But its design was human. They had found him. Somehow, they knew what he had discovered, and they were coming. Marcus looked at the cascade nullifier sitting in its case. In his hands was the power to destroy civilizations or save them. The power to start wars or end them. And he was just one human salvager who had spent his last 7 credits on a rusty ship. He grabbed the weapon case and ran for the bridge. He had to get off this moon. Now. Marcus slammed his fist against the control panel, trying to coax more power from the dying engines. The Prometheus legacy shuddered and groaned as it lifted off from Keswick 9. Half the systems were still offline, and the ship was barely holding together. But it could fly. That would have to be enough. Behind him, the 4 ships in orbit broke formation and began their descent. They were not even trying to hide their intentions anymore. Marcus pushed the throttle forward, angling toward the edge of the moon's gravity well. If he could just make it to open space, he might have a chance to jump to faster-than-light speed. Might. The communication system crackled to life. A cold, mechanical voice filled the bridge. "Unknown human vessel. This is Consortium Council Enforcer Ship Radiant Justice. You are commanded to land immediately and surrender all salvaged materials for inspection. Failure to comply will result in destruction." Marcus ignored them and kept flying. The Prometheus legacy groaned in protest as he pushed it harder. A warning light flashed on his console. The port engine was overheating. Of course it was. Nothing on this ship worked properly. Another voice cut in, harsh and clicking. The translator rendered it in flat tones. Human thief, you possess Xanthir property. Return what you have stolen, or your death will be measured in centuries of pain. The Xanthir. Of course they were here. If they knew what the Cascade Nullifier had been designed to do to their ancestors, they would stop at nothing to destroy it. Or possibly, to use it themselves for revenge. A third transmission came through. This one in clean, unaccented English. Marcus Chen. This is Captain Williams of the Terra Ascendant. We know what you found. That technology belongs to humanity. Stand down and transfer the device to us. We will ensure your safety and compensation. Marcus laughed bitterly. The Terra Ascendant were extremists. Humans who believed that Earth should dominate the galaxy by any means necessary. They would absolutely use the weapon. Probably starting with every non-human species they could reach. He would rather die than give it to them. The fourth ship, the one with no identification, stayed silent. Somehow, that scared Marcus more than all the threats combined. He cleared the moon's atmosphere and activated the jump drive. Nothing happened. He tried again, cursing under his breath. The drive hummed and whined, but refused to engage. Too much damage. He would need at least an hour to repair it, and he did not have an hour. He barely had minutes. The four ships were gaining on him fast. He could see them on his sensors now, spreading out to cut off any escape route. They were faster, better armed, and had functioning systems. He was flying a 300-year-old rust bucket, held together with spare parts and hope. But Marcus had one advantage they did not know about. He had the weapon, and he knew how to use it. His fingers flew across the controls, plotting a course toward the nearest inhabited system. New Vladivostok, an old human colony that had been abandoned during the consolidation decades ago. It was only 2 light hours away at sublight speed. Some people still lived there, mostly outcasts and independents, who did not want to be part of the consortium. If he could make it there, he might find help. More importantly, he might find Dr. Sarah Okonkwo. She had been his partner back when he was still doing legitimate salvage work. She was a genius with xenotechnology, able to figure out how any alien system worked. If anyone could help him understand the full capabilities of the Cascade Nullifier, it was her. Weapons fire lit up the space around him. The consortium ships were firing warning shots, trying to force him to stop. Marcus jinked the Prometheus legacy to the side, dodging the energy beams by pure luck. The ship's shields, what little remained of them, flickered and died under the assault. He made a decision. A crazy, desperate, probably suicidal decision. But it was the only option he had. Marcus opened the case containing the Cascade Nullifier. The device inside was covered in controls and readouts that he barely understood. According to the research notes, it could be set to different power levels and ranges. Maximum power would create the expanding dead zone that Dr. Vasquez had warned about. But minimum power, focused in a tight area, should only disable technology temporarily in a limited space. Should, probably, maybe. The research notes had not been completely clear on that point. He set the controls to what he hoped was the minimum setting, aimed the device at the pursuing ships, and activated it. The effect was immediate and terrifying. A wave of shimmering energy pulsed outward from the Prometheus legacy. When it hit the 4 pursuing ships, their engines died instantly. Their weapon systems went dark. Even their life support flickered and failed. The ships went from deadly predators to lifeless hunks of metal in the span of a heartbeat. But the wave kept expanding. Marcus watched in horror as it reached a nearby asteroid mining station. Every light on the station went out. He could hear emergency broadcasts on all frequencies as the miners suddenly found themselves in the dark, their equipment dead. The wave kept going, faster than he had expected, spreading out in all directions. It would reach New Vladivostok in minutes. It would shut down everything there too, and according to his readings, the effect was not going to be temporary. He had used more power than he thought. The affected technology would not just reboot. It would need to be completely rebuilt, using only basic materials and simple tools. Marcus felt sick. He had just stranded thousands of people, including himself. The Prometheus Legacy's engines were shutting down too, affected by the weapon's backwash. He was coasting on momentum now, headed toward New Vladivostok whether he wanted to go there or not. Behind him, the 4 dead ships were already being overtaken by rescue vessels that had stayed far enough away to avoid the pulse. But those ships would not reach the disabled vessels for hours, and when they did, they would find their quarry long gone. The Prometheus Legacy drifted through space like a ghost ship, all of its systems dark except for basic life support. Marcus sat in the command chair and stared at the weapon in his lap. In trying to escape, he had just demonstrated exactly why this device was so dangerous. And now, everyone in the galaxy would know for certain what he possessed. New Vladivostok grew larger in his view screen, a small gray planet with a single orbiting station. Both were completely dark now, caught in the edge of his weapon's effect. He would crash land there, assuming the ship held together long enough, and then he would have to face the consequences of what he had done. The Cascade nullifier hummed softly in his hands, its power cells still charged. It could probably fire several more times before running out of energy. Part of him wanted to throw it out the airlock and be done with it. But he knew that would solve nothing. The knowledge of how to build the weapon was stored in the Prometheus Legacy's computers, and somewhere out there were 2 more prototypes. This was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning. The Prometheus Legacy hit the ground hard, plowing through 1/2 kilometer of frozen dirt before coming to rest against a hillside. Marcus was thrown against his restraints, his head slamming into the headrest. For a moment, everything went dark. When he came to, alarms were blaring, and smoke filled the bridge. He grabbed the weapon case and stumbled out through the emergency hatch. The air outside was thin and cold, but breathable. New Vladivostok had been terraformed centuries ago, though the process had never been completed. The colony had been abandoned when better worlds were found, leaving behind a few thousand stubborn souls who preferred isolation to civilization. Those people were probably very unhappy with him right now. Marcus trudged through the snow toward the nearest settlement, a cluster of prefab buildings about 3 kilometers away. Every step was agony. His ribs hurt, probably cracked from the crash, but he had to keep moving. He had to find Sarah. He found the colony in chaos. People were running everywhere, shouting and trying to figure out what had happened. All the power was out. All the vehicles were dead. Even simple things like electric lights and heating units had failed. The only things still working were purely mechanical devices, things that did not rely on any kind of advanced electronics or quantum processors. Marcus made his way to the research station on the edge of town. Sarah had mentioned in her last message that she was working there, studying some alien artifacts that had been found in the hills. The building was dark like everything else, but he could see candlelight flickering in one of the windows. He pounded on the door until it opened. Sarah stood there, holding a candle and a wrench, looking ready to hit whoever was interrupting her. Then she saw his face, and her expression changed from anger to shock. "Marcus, what are you doing here? And what the hell happened to all the power?" Marcus, I need your help," he said. "And I am really sorry about the power." Sarah pulled him inside and listened in, growing horror as he explained everything. The ship, the weapon, the chase, the pulse that had disabled all the technology in the region. When he finished, she sat down heavily on a workbench and put her head in her hands. "You idiot," she said quietly. "You complete and total idiot. Do you have any idea what you have done? I know. I am sorry. But I need your help to fix this. Or at least to understand what this thing can really do." Sarah looked at the Cascade nullifier sitting in its case. Even in the candlelight, Marcus could see the fear and fascination in her eyes. She was a scientist. She could not help but be curious. They spent the next 3 days studying the weapon while the colony slowly adjusted to life without technology. Sarah had some equipment that ran on chemical batteries and basic circuits, primitive enough that the weapon's pulse had not affected it. Using these tools, they analyzed the device and the research data from the Prometheus legacy. What they discovered made Marcus wish he had never bought that ship. The weapon was worse than he had thought. The pulse he had released was already spreading, moving outward at a significant fraction of light speed. It would not stop. It would keep expanding forever, creating a growing sphere of dead space where advanced technology could not function. In a few years, it would reach the nearest major star systems. In a century, it would encompass hundreds of inhabited worlds. "This is not a weapon," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "This is a doomsday device. Once activated, it ends technological civilization permanently for everything in its path." But there was a slim hope. Sarah had found something in the research data that the original scientists had noted but never fully explored. The weapon worked by disrupting quantum field harmonics. But if those harmonics could be stabilized using a counter-frequency, technology could be made immune to the effect. It was like a vaccine. Once applied, systems would be resistant to the cascade nullifier's disruption. The problem was creating that counter-frequency and distributing it across the galaxy before the dead zone expanded too far. It would take years, maybe decades, and it would require the original weapon to be used as a template, then destroyed in the process. Marcus and Sarah worked frantically, trying to build a device that could generate the counter-frequency. But they were working with primitive tools in a dead technology zone. Every piece of equipment they tried to use either did not work or had to be rebuilt from scratch using pre-digital components. On the fourth day, Sarah picked up a faint radio transmission. Multiple fleets were approaching New Vladivostok. The consortium had sent an armada. The Xanthir remnant had dispatched 3 battle carriers, and the Terra Ascendant was bringing everything they had. All of them were willing to start a war to control or destroy the weapon. "They will bombard the entire planet from orbit," Sarah said. "They will kill everyone here, just to make sure the weapon is destroyed." Marcus stared at the cascade nullifier. He had 3 choices. He could destroy the weapon right now. That would stop the immediate threat, but do nothing about the expanding dead zone already spreading through space. It would also leave humanity vulnerable. The other 2 prototypes were still out there somewhere, and if someone else found them, humanity would have no defense. He could give the weapon to one of the factions. The consortium would lock it away and probably execute him for using it. The Xanthir would use it to create dead zones around human space, trapping humanity forever. The Terra Ascendant would use it to terrorize the galaxy into submission. Or he could keep it. Become the most dangerous person in the galaxy. Use the threat of the weapon to force peace. But that would make him a target forever. And it would not solve the problem of the expanding dead zone. "There is a 4th option," Sarah said quietly. She had been working on her portable computer, running calculations. "What if we tell everyone? Release all the data. How to build the weapon. How to build the defense. Everything." Marcus stared at her. "That is insane. You want to give every species in the galaxy the ability to build this thing? Think about it. Right now, the weapon is powerful because only you have it. But if everyone has it, and everyone has the defense, then no one has an advantage. Mutually assured destruction. It worked for Earth during the nuclear age. It could work now on a galactic scale. Or it could lead to hundreds of dead zones spreading across the galaxy as different factions use the weapon on each other." "Maybe," Sarah admitted. "But at least it gives everyone a choice. Right now, you are making the decision for the entire galaxy. Is that really what you want? And into better." In quote, Marcus looked out the window at the dark colony. People were surviving without their technology. They were adapting. That was what humans did. They adapted. They found ways to survive no matter how bad things got. Outside, He could hear the sound of ships entering the atmosphere. The fleets had arrived. In minutes, they would be knocking on the door. And he still had not decided what to do. He picked up the weapon case and stood up. Sarah looked at him questioningly. "I have an idea," Marcus said. "It is probably stupid. It will definitely make everyone angry. But it is the only thing I can think of that might actually work." "What are you going to do?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Something very human." Marcus stood in the middle of New Vladivostok's main square, surrounded by soldiers from 3 different species. The consortium forces had their weapons trained on him from the left. The Xanthir warriors circled to his right, their battle armor gleaming even in the dim light. And behind him, the Terra Ascendant troops formed a line, their faces hidden behind helmets. In his hands, Marcus held a datapad. Not the weapon. Just a simple, mechanical datapad that still worked despite the technology dead zone around the planet. "Before anyone does anything stupid," Marcus called out, "you should know that 5 minutes ago, I transmitted the complete technical specifications for the Cascade Nullifier to every public network in the galaxy. Every university, every research station, every government database, every communication relay. I sent it everywhere. The effect was immediate." The consortium commander started shouting into his communication device. The Xanthir leader roared in fury. Captain Williams of the Terra Ascendant simply stared at Marcus in disbelief. "You did what?" Williams asked. "I made it public domain," Marcus said calmly. "Every species in the galaxy now has access to the complete plans for the weapon. How to build it, how it works, all of it. I also included the research data on the counter-frequency defense. Anyone who wants to can build both the weapon and the protection against it." The consortium commander found his voice. "You have doomed us all. Do you realize what you have done? Now anyone can build a doomsday weapon." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "Anyone can. Which means everyone will. And when everyone has the same weapon, and everyone has the same defense, what do you have? Balance. Madness," the Xanthir leader hissed. "No." Sarah stepped forward from the crowd of colonists. She had been waiting for her cue. "This is deterrence. No single faction can use the weapon without everyone else using it too. No one can win, so no one will use it. Just like the nuclear weapons that almost destroyed Earth centuries ago. Mutually assured destruction kept the peace then. It can keep the peace now. Just Indies a century. Both." Captain Williams lowered his weapon slightly. "But the spreading dead zone. The pulse you already released is still expanding. That does not solve anything." Marcus nodded. "You are right. Which is why I am about to do something else." He pulled out the Cascade Nullifier from its case. Every weapon in the square immediately pointed at him. But Marcus just smiled and adjusted the settings on the device. According to Sarah's calculations, this thing can do more than just kill technology. At very precise settings, it can equalize technology, reduce everything to the same level without destroying it permanently. Watch. He activated the weapon on its lowest possible setting, aimed at the sky. A pulse of energy shot upward, spreading out over New Vladivostok and into orbit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ships above began to move, but slowly, clumsily. Every ship in orbit, regardless of species or faction, was now operating at the same technological level. "No one has an advantage anymore," Marcus said. "Not here. Not now. You are all equal. And you are going to stay that way until we work out an agreement." The consortium commander was furious. "You cannot hold us hostage like this. I just did. Now here is what is going to happen. We are going to sit down and negotiate a treaty. All species, all factions, everyone gets a voice. The Cascade technology becomes a shared deterrent, maintained by all species equally. No one gets to keep it secret. No one gets to monopolize it. It belongs to everyone, which means it belongs to no one. And if we refuse? The Xanthir leader asked. Marcus gestured to the weapon in his hands. Then I keep this. And I keep using it to level the playing field whenever someone tries to gain an advantage through force. I become the galaxy's referee. Trust me, you do not want that. I barely know what I am doing with this thing. There was a long silence. Marcus could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. The consortium was thinking about resources and legal precedents. The Xanthir were considering honor and revenge. The Terra Ascendant was weighing dreams of human dominance against the reality of the situation. Finally, Captain Williams spoke. The treaty would have to include safeguards, inspections, verification protocols. Agreed, Marcus said. The consortium commander made a grinding noise that his translator rendered as reluctant acceptance. The council will have terms. Many terms. I am sure they will, Marcus replied. The Xanthir leader was the last to speak. Our ancestors were humiliated by this technology once before. We will not allow that to happen again. Then, help build the defense, Sarah interjected. Make sure everyone is protected, including your people. That is the whole point. Over the next 3 weeks, representatives from every major species in the galaxy arrived at New Vladivostok. The small colony became the center of the most important negotiations in galactic history. Marcus sat in on most of the meetings. The Cascade Nullifier, never far from his side. Not as a threat, but as a reminder of what was at stake. The treaty that emerged was imperfect and complicated. But it worked. The technology for both the weapon and its defense would be shared openly. Every species would have access to both. An independent oversight committee, with representatives from all major factions, would monitor for violations. The expanding dead zone from Marcus's initial pulse would be contained using a network of counter-frequency generators placed at strategic points. It would take years to fully implement. Decades, probably, but it was a start. On the day the treaty was signed, Marcus stood in the square again, watching the last of the military ships leave orbit. Sarah joined him, carrying 2 cups of something that might have been coffee. You are famous now, she said. The man who bought a spaceship for 7 credits and used it to reshape galactic politics. I am also probably the most hated person in the galaxy, Marcus replied. The consortium thinks I am a reckless fool. The Xanthir want revenge for what the weapon did to their ancestors. And the Terra Ascendant considers me a traitor to humanity. True, but you are also still alive, which is more than I expected 3 weeks ago. Marcus laughed and took a sip of the coffee. It was terrible. But it was warm, and it was real. Made the old-fashioned way without any technology more advanced than a fire and a pot. What are you going to do now? Sarah asked. Marcus looked at the Prometheus Legacy, still sitting where it had crashed on the hillside. Repair crews had been working on it, using basic tools to slowly bring it back to life. It would never be pretty, but it would fly again. Keep salvaging, I guess. Someone has to find the other 2 prototypes before they end up in the wrong hands. You know where they are? Marcus smiled. I have some ideas. The research notes mentioned a few possible locations. I figured I should probably check them out before someone else does. That is dangerous work. Everything about this weapon is dangerous. But someone has to do it. Might as well be the idiot who started all this. Sarah shook her head, but she was smiling too. You know, for someone who spent his last 7 credits on a rust bucket, you have a strange way of making an investment pay off. Marcus looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the knowledge he had released was spreading. People were building the weapons. They were building the defenses. The galaxy was changing, adapting to a new reality where humanity's desperate invention from 3 centuries ago had become the cornerstone of peace through mutual fear. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was very human. Taking something terrible and finding a way to make it work. Adapting, surviving, never giving up. His communication device buzzed. It was a simple thing, rebuilt from parts to work without advanced technology. A message appeared on the screen. Just coordinates and a single line of text. There was a fourth prototype. You will want to find this one first. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. Then he drained his coffee and started walking toward his ship. Where are you going? Sarah called after him. Back to work, he replied. The universe is not going to save itself. Sarah watched him go, shaking her head. But there was pride in her eyes. Marcus Chen, the salvager who had spent his last 7 credits and changed the galaxy. She wondered what he would find next. In the distance, the Prometheus Legacy's engines coughed to life, their mechanical rumble echoing across the frozen landscape. Marcus Chen was going back to the stars. And somewhere out there, another piece of humanity's desperate past was waiting to be found. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humans, especially the ones with nothing left to lose but 7 credits and a crazy dream.